Let's talk about fertility. I'm not the kind of person that feels like there are a bunch of lines and boundaries on what should or shouldn't be talked about or what's too much. So if mention of cervical mucus, discharge, that kind of thing bothers you, then you probably don't want to watch this video, because it's a part of the woman's reproductive cycle and very key ingredient in understanding what's going on with a woman's body. So whether you're trying to conceive, you will be trying to conceive sometime soon, you're trying not to conceive right now, whatever your story is, you want to know more about your body. A lot of people are trying to conceive and failing for certain reasons. It's very well known or frequently thought that a woman's basal temperature changes during ovulation, and a lot of people fail to conceive because they're waiting for that temperature change, but in reality the ovulation happens before that temperature change. So by the time your body changes temperature, you've already ovulated, it's kind of over, you've missed the boat. So that's not the best way to try to conceive. It's a great way to know you can go ahead and have intercourse after that's happened, because you probably won't get pregnant. Obviously there's always going to be a chance that, you know, you could get pregnant if you're having unprotected sex, etc. But if you're going to use this method, family planning, you're going to pay attention to your body's signs and signals in order to try to conceive. Try not to conceive. There's always a chance you could get pregnant at an unexpected time, you could have a second ovulation, etc. Highly recommend that, number one, I would recommend you check out the book Taking Charge of Your Fertility, and you can buy an old revised copy of the book for just a few cents on Amazon. And as far as I can tell, there's not a whole lot about the new revised versions that are much more expensive that that you really are missing out on, that you would need. They've got great charts. I think the basis of the information is still there. That's the one that I used, and it taught me a whole lot. I highly recommend you first start out with charting everything. I recommend you start out with charting your mucus and your temperature, your basal temperature. To chart your temperature, well, there's also the option of charting your cervix itself. So you stick your fingers in there and you feel how your cervix feels. It can kind of go up or back, like it can come kind of more towards the entrance or go back. It can be kind of hard like your nose, or softer, more tender, squishier. You can kind of feel the opening being like really closed off, or you can feel it kind of opening. That's not really worked for me. It's kind of fine-tuned. I think it takes a lot of training to be able to feel that for yourself. So it's not something that like I'm going to talk about right now, because even having all the information in a book and trying to do it for several months, it's just not something that felt like it indicated anything or did anything for me. But basal temperature is pretty simple. You keep a thermometer by your bed. I actually take a rubber band and I attach the thermometer, say this is the thermometer, I attach it to the front of my phone and I wrap a rubber band around it, because one of the first things I do when I start to wake up is I reach for my phone to look at what time it is, and that's right, I'm supposed to take my temperature before I really move. So I'll take my thermometer out, I'll put it under my tongue, take my temperature, hold still, trying not to like change my temperature through movement, and then I've got it, I've got my phone open, I record it, and that's done. So my body temperature when I wake up in the morning between my period and ovulation is 97.0 through 97.45. It's usually 97.3, somewhere in there. Once I ovulated, so a day or two after I ovulate, about 2 days after I ovulate, my temperature jumps up to in the like 98.0 to 98.2. If it's ever higher, it's very rare. Sometimes it'll be like 97.6 or something, which is still higher than the other 2 weeks. So when that jumps up, and then it'll stay up, I know that I've ovulated already. So my temperature stays up. I throw the covers off at night. I'm much warmer than usual in the day, in my clothes, etc. during post-ovulation to my period. As soon as my period hits, my temperature drops back down. I need more covers at night for 2 weeks until after I've ovulated. So that's how I know when I've finished ovulating. When I know that ovulation is coming up and that I am ovulating is through cervical mucus. So I ovulate about 12 to 14 days after my period starts, and I can tell because I either have like watery discharge, or I have creamy discharge, or just kind of that egg white, thick, slimy discharge. I used to think that just happened randomly at different times during the month, etc., but it really is about ovulation. So now that I'm charting and now that I'm paying attention to that, I know when those days come that I am ovulating. Usually the day that I ovulate, I might have like the water trickling down my thighs feeling like I just peed myself, something weird is happening. I know that I've ovulated, or my underwear is wet, that kind of thing. That's how I know that I'm ovulating. The other one is just the like egg white. You go to wipe and it looks like you've been aroused, very well lubricated. So about the cervical mucus, so that you conceptually understand it, your mucus, the fluids down there are very acidic, and it's made so that semen can't survive. It's a very hostile environment. It's to keep bacteria, it's to keep the right kind of culture and environment going on down there. And the day before, like the day or two before you ovulate, the day you ovulate, a little bit after maybe, you'll have a different kind of mucus, and that mucus is actually hospitable to fertilizing agents, to semen, to sperm. So everybody gets invited in. Everybody has tea while they wait for the egg to drop. You can have sex, you can have intercourse a few times, and sperm will hang out in there and wait. And then when the egg drops, it all tries to get to the egg, and then after that, the mucus is going to change back to normal, and it's just going to be a very acidic, inhospitable environment. So those are very important things to chart. You really don't want to be completely paranoid, wondering if you're pregnant or if you're going to start your period while you're not starting your period, going to your doctor, everybody's terrified, etc., and then you have your period and you're fine. And if you had known and you were charting your ovulation, you would have known that you didn't ovulate on time and that you weren't going to have a normal cycle. Stress can postpone your ovulation. Ovulation is always going to happen. As soon as your ovulation happens, you're always going to have a period between 11 to 14 days after. It depends on the woman. I'm pretty sure I have my period like exactly 13 days after I ovulate. So as soon as I know I ovulate, I mark it on my fertility tracker. I know that 13 days later, I'm either going to bleed or I'm going to be not bleeding, wondering if I'm pregnant. It can vary a little bit, but if you have a tendency to have an irregular schedule, or if you have a regular schedule and you can chart it, and then you have a very stressful month, and you can tell that you're not ovulating, then when you finally do ovulate, when you finally do, your mucus changes, your temperature changes, etc., and you can mark when you ovulated, then you know your period isn't going to come for 2 weeks. So you can save yourself a lot of stress. I have a friend who just went through that experience. She had a very, very, very stressful month, and she was trying to conceive, and she thought she was pregnant, but pregnancy tests were coming up negative. She went about 3 weeks without having her period, and finally, in a panic, went to her doctor thinking something was really wrong. Her doctor agreed something was really wrong. She got all this medication to go on, and she finally had her period. And it was my guess that that month of a lot of stress probably delayed her ovulation, and that she would probably have her period way late, or she was pregnant, which is fine too. And sure enough, she finally had her period. And if she had been tracking, if she knew what to look for, she would have known she didn't ovulate until that month ended, and she had finally relaxed. Her body finally ovulated, and then it was 2 weeks, just like normal, just on schedule. That's the way that her body is supposed to go. So I really hate women thinking there's something wrong with them or not knowing what's going on in their own body. So definitely educate yourself, track yourself, watch yourself, pay attention, and it's much more easier to predict and to try to conceive if you're just having sex as often as possible, around your periods, you ovulate somewhere in between, but you don't think that you're regular, etc. It would really, really help to go ahead and start charting things. Again, purchase Taking Charge of Your Fertility, the book, have it shipped to you on Amazon. Really, really inexpensive to get an older copy, and start using the charts, start trying it out, and actually learn what your body does. And it's just amazing amount of information. I knew a lot about my body. I knew more than anyone that I knew. And when I read that book, I learned a lot that I did not know.